every project manager understands that risks are unavoidable in projects. No amount of planning can overcome risk. So, risk is an uncertain event, a condition that, if it occurs, has a positive or negative effect on project objectives. Risks can be anticipated consequences like schedule slippages or cost overruns. Risks can be beyond imagination like the 2008 financial meltdown or the COVID-19 pandemic. While risks can have positive consequences such as the unexpected price reduction in materials, the primary focus in this topic is on what can go wrong and the risk management process. This figure will present a graphic model of the risk management challenge. The chances of the risk event occurring are greatest during the early stage of a project. This is when uncertainty is highest and many questions remain unanswered. As the project progresses toward completion, risk declines as the answers to critical issues are resolved. The cost impact of the risk event, however, increases over the life of the project. For example, the risk event of a design flaw occurring after a prototype has been made has a greater cost or time impact than if that flaw was discovered during the planning phase of the project. Risk management is a proactive approach rather than reactive. It is a preventive process designed to ensure that surprises are reduced and that negative consequences associated with undesirable events are minimized. It also prepares a project manager to take action when a time, cost, and technical advantage is possible. Successful management of project risk gives the project manager better control over the future and can significantly improve chances of reaching project objectives on time, within budget, and meeting required technical or functional performance. The sources of project risks are unlimited. There are external sources such as inflation, market acceptance, exchange rates, and government regulations. Since such external risks are usually considered before the decision to go ahead with the project, they will be excluded from the decision of project risks. However, external risks are extremely important and must be addressed. The major components of the risk management process are depicted here. We have 4 steps in the process. Step 1, risk identification. Step 2, risk assessment. Step 3, risk response development. And step 4, risk response control. Each step will be examined in more detail. The risk management process begins by trying to generate a list of all the possible risks that could affect the project. Research has stated that groups make more accurate judgments about risk than individuals. So, during the planning phase, the project manager builds up a risk management team with core team members and other relevant stakeholders to identify source of risk. They will use brainstorming and other problem identifying techniques to identify potential problems. When the team is working on identifying risks, they should focus on the events that could produce consequences. For example, team members may identify failing to meet schedule as a major risk. What they need to focus on are the events that could cause this to happen, such as poor estimates, adverse weather, shipping delays, etc. Potential solutions can be found only by focus on actual events. Organizations use risk breakdown structures or RBS in conjunction with work breakdown structure to help management teams identify and analyze risks. The focus at the beginning should be on risks that can affect the whole project. After the macro risks have been identified, specific areas can be checked. An effective tool for identifying specific risks is the work breakdown structure. Use of the risk breakdown structure reduces the chance a risk event will be missed. A risk profile is another useful tool. A risk profile is a list of questions that address traditional areas of uncertainty on a project. These questions have been developed and refined from previous similar projects. The figure on the screen will show you a partial example of a risk profile for a project development project. Risk profiles are generated and maintained usually by personnel from the project office. They are updated and refined during the post-project audit. These profiles, when kept up to date, can be a powerful resource in the risk management process. Now we move to step 2. Remember, not all of identified risks deserve attention. Some are negligible and can be ignored, but others are serious and can threaten your project results. Scenario analysis is the easiest and most commonly used technique for analyzing risk. Team members assess the significance of each risk event in terms of probability of the event and impact of the event. The risk analysis process requires that different levels of risk probabilities and impacts must be defined. These definitions vary and should be tailored to the specific nature and needs of each project. The risk management team needs to define upfront what distinguishes a 1 from a 3 or moderate impact from severe impact. After those steps, document of scenario analysis can be seen in various risk assessment forms used by companies. The figure is an example of a risk assessment form used on an information system project involving the upgrade from Windows 10 to Windows 11. Notice that in addition to evaluating the severity and probability of risk event, the team also assesses when the event might occur and its detection difficulty. Detection difficulty is a measure of how easy it would be to detect that the event was going to occur in time to take mitigation action. So in the Windows 11 conversion example, the detection scale would range from 5, no warning, to 1, loss of time to react. The risk severity matrix provides a basis for prioritizing which risks to address. Red zone receive first priority, followed by yellow zone risk. Green zone are typically considered inconsequential and ignored unless their status changed. No assessment scheme is absolutely foolproof actually. So make sure that there is no substitute for thoughtful decision of key risk events. There are many statistical techniques available that can assist a project manager in assessing risk. Decision trees have been used to assess alternative courses of action using expected value. Statistical variations of NPV have been used to assess cash flow risk in projects. Correlations between past project cash flows and S-curves have been used to assess cash flow risk, and PERT simulation can be used to review activity and project risk. When a risk event is identified and assessed, a decision must be made concerning which response is appropriate for the risk event. Responses to risk can be classified as mitigating, avoiding, transferring, or retaining. A contingency plan is an alternative plan that will be used if a possible foreseen risk event becomes a reality. The contingency plan represents actions that will reduce or mitigate the negative impact of the risk event. A key distinction between a risk response and a contingency plan is that a response is part of the actual implementation plan and action is taken before the risk can materialize, while a contingency plan is not part of the initial implementation plan and only goes into effect after the risk is recognized. Like all plans, the contingency plan answers the questions of what, where, when, and how much action will be placed. The absence of a contingency plan when a risk event occurs can cause a manager to delay or postpone the decision to implement a response. This postponement can lead to panic and acceptance of the first solution suggested. Such after the event of decision-making under pressure can be potentially dangerous and costly. Because implementation of a contingency plan embodies disruption in the sequence of work, all contingency plans should be communicated to team members so that surprise and resistance are minimized. Risk response matrices are useful for summarizing how the project team plans to manage risks that have been identified. Again, the Windows project is used to illustrate this kind of matrix. The first step is to identify whether to reduce, share, transfer, or accept the risk. The team decided to reduce the chances of the system freezing by experimenting with a prototype of the system. Prototype experimentation not only allows them to identify and fix conversion bugs before the actual installation, but it also uses information that could be useful in enhancing acceptance by end users. The project team is then able to identify and document changes between the old and new system that will be incorporated in the training the user receives. A risk of equipment malfunctioning is transferred by choosing a reliable supplier with a strong warranty program. There are some typical kinds of risks. Some common methods may be applied when we respond to them, such as with technical risk. We can use backup plan, sophisticated CAD program, or technology applications. With schedule risk, we can use contingency fund, reducing project duration techniques. Regarding cost risk, we might use contingency for price changes. For funding risk, there is one way to fund new projects is to cancel other projects. The results of the first three steps of the risk management process are summarized in a formal document, often called the risk register. It is the backbone for the last step in the risk management process, risk control. Risk control involves executing the risk response strategy, monitoring trigger events, initiating contingency plans, and watching for new risks. Establishing a change management system to deal with events that require formal changes in the scope, budget, and schedule of the project is an essential element of risk control. Most changes easily fall into three categories. Scope changes in form of design or additions represent big changes. For example, customer requests for a new feature or a redesign that will improve the product. Implementation of contingency plans when risk events occur represent changes in baseline cost and schedule. Improvement changes suggested by project team members represent another category. The change management systems are designed to identify proposed change, list expected effects of proposed change on schedule and budget, review, evaluate, and approve or disapprove of change formally, negotiate and resolve conflicts of change, condition, and cost, communicate changes to parties affected, assign responsibility for implementing change, adjust master schedule and budget, track own changes that are to be implemented. As part of the project communication plan, stakeholders define upfront the communication and decision-making process that will be used to evaluate and accept changes. The process can be captured in a flow diagram. Every approved change must be identified and integrated into the plan of record through changes in the project WBS and baseline schedule. If the change control system is not integrated with the WBS and baseline, project plans and control will soon self-destruct. So, one of the key to the successful change control process is document.